So today I'm here to talk about 10 of the best dark academia books that I have read. I really enjoy this genre, but I'll be honest that there's a lot of bad books in it, and so I want to highlight the good today. If you're interested, I could definitely do a follow-up video highlighting the bad. And so here I'm going to talk about books. I'll break it out into two groups. So I'm going to talk about books that are more dark fiction, and then books that more lean into fantasy and SFF. So if that all sounds good, let's get started. First, let's talk about Education Malice by S.T. Gibson. And this is a deliciously dark academia story that follows a girl who goes off to a girls' boarding school. There she meets another young girl, Camilla, and they form a very intense rivalry. So within the story, it definitely follows the tropes of a school setting where there's a lot of talk about scheduling. You have professors giving lectures and so forth. And so if you just love being, again, in the academic world, this is one that will appeal to you in those regards, especially at the get-go. And then within the story, you have, again, this really intense relationship between these two girls. And I love female friendship or female rivalry when it's done right. And this is very well developed. The characters are interesting and unique. I love this author's writing style. I find to be, again, like deliciously dark. There is a style to it with the prose, and it worked very well. This is a retelling of the classic story of Camilla, but for myself, I do say that the story works very well, even if you're not familiar with that tale. It's just a good piece of literature. It's a good twisty story, and I think that if you're looking for something like that, you're going to be happy with this one. Next is The Secret Place by Tana French. Now this is one of the follow-up books in the Dublin Murder Squad series, but definitely you can jump in here because it is a companion story. Each one follows a new detective that is coming onto the squad, and so in this one you find out that there was a boy who was murdered at a girls' boarding school a year back, and the story gets opened up because there's a girl that comes forward saying that she knows what happened. And so the detectives go off to investigate. Basically, they find, without giving away too much, that there are a lot of secrets there. There's some sort of secret society or girls that are just keeping things on the down low, passing around rumors, gossip, all of that. And so again, I love that this one, it leans much more into reality. It doesn't have any supernatural elements, but it specifically leans into the culture of mean girls in the intensity that comes with boarding schools, where again, they are all friends, but also enemies. Everyone has their secrets and they're trying to backstab each other. So if you love those aspects of dark academia, this one will definitely appeal to you. This one is slow paced and very character driven. I was more interested in the dynamics between the girls as much as I was interested in who murdered this young boy, because again, everyone has secrets, everyone has something they're hiding, and it's so, again, I want to use the word again, deliciously dark, because I think that is just what dark academia does best. Next, let's talk about Summer Suns by Lee Mandello, and this is a novel that follows a young gay man who finds out that his partner, his boyfriend, has died. He is away at college, and so the boyfriend that's still living goes off to find out what happened. So he goes off to the college, he meets the boyfriend's friends, and finds out more about the life that he had away from him. This is one that has multiple layers to it. So you have an element of car racing, which I really enjoy. People often compare this book to something like the Fast and Furious. It also, of course, has the mystery of what happened to the boyfriend. With Lee Mandello, they kind of lean back and forth between thriller to horror, and so I want to leave it to the reader to discover exactly what is going on. But within the story, and the part that I don't hear discussed as often and was a great surprise to me, is that again, because they're going off to college, they actually spend a lot of time dealing with studying and classes and college life, and that is woven into the creepiness of the story in a really satisfying way. I think that this author is fantastic at writing really well fleshed out, interesting characters. I just honestly want to know more about the boyfriend who died. I wanted to learn more about the protagonist that we were reading the story from and the friends all surrounding them. Everything was interesting and the details were something that I wanted to know more of what was happening, and the author did a really good job of creating that level of suspense that pulled me through the story. I love this one, highly recommend it. I don't see enough people reading it, and it's a great piece of hidden dark academia. Next, let's talk about If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And this is a story that is set over two timelines. The story starts out with this individual who's getting out of jail. They have been accused and sentenced for the death of someone else. and someone approaches them who was involved in the case, wanting to know what really happened, and then we flash back to the past, giving that story as it is told. Now, this story is unique because while it has a general school setting, specifically it's all written around this performance of the Shakespearean play. And so the story itself is divided nicely into 5 acts, just as the Shakespeare play would be, and you see the ebb and flow of the climax to match that, which I thought was very cleverly done, very smart. Now, because of the future perspective, we do know generally what happened in the past, but it doesn't make the past perspective any less interesting because of course we want to know the details of did this person actually do it and what led to it. So this is one that I was very impressed by the writing, the prose, the style of it. Again, there's something very stylistic about this work. The characters are richly drawn, and I actually held off reading this book for quite a while because I don't particularly love the work of Shakespeare. I respect it and its influence and all of that. I just have very poor memories of reading it in high school and really disliking English class at the time because of it. I actually didn't think I liked reading because I hated reading Shakespeare so much in school. But anyway, I held off reading this book because of my own baggage, and I'm really glad that I finally took the leap because even if you're not necessarily in love with Shakespeare, again, I think that they take the tropes around Shakespeare, the tropes around playwriting and performance, and it's just, again, so well done that while I don't love Shakespeare, I can completely appreciate what this book is doing, and it made for an enjoyable ride where you'll appreciate more the more that you know about the influence, but it's just a good story on its own, and I really enjoyed this one. It's short, it's easy to fly through, and I do recommend it. I believe it's classified as young adult. I might be wrong on that, but as someone who mostly reads adult fiction, this one completely holds up to a mature audience, and I was gripped in. It's a short little tale, but well worth your time. And finally, if I want to talk about some of the best dark academia, I have to mention The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I think everyone knows this book. It's a piece of literary fiction that follows a group of students, and right at the beginning of the story, in I believe the first line, or the first paragraph at least, they let us know that the character of Bunny has died. And then everything else in the book is leading up to what happened to cause this group of friends to kill this other student. So this book is just so rich in details. Again, this is one, you'll see this as a recurring theme within this video, but really great character work. So again, you spend a lot of time getting to know the characters, the little nuances and details of their lives. And in another story, in another author's hand, that could be quite boring, but here it was so well done, and I was just gripped into this narrative. I can be hit or miss with literary fiction, but this is really literary fiction done best. And I think definitely, while it is not a traditional thriller, will appeal to those that are just dipping their toes into the genre and are a little bit intimidated by the word literary. This one just has, again, some really interesting ideas around it, a great premise, great characters, and there's a good amount of suspense. Even though it's a very large book, I was gripped in. I wanted to know what was happening. The characters themselves are naturally a bit unlikable. You're not necessarily supposed to love them or want to be best friends with them, but again, it makes for a really good setup to a book because you know that they've done this terrible thing, and then you get to find out why and analyze their decisions along the way, and you may not necessarily agree with them, but it makes for an interesting story. All right, let's switch over to SFF that deals with dark academia, and I believe all of these books are fantasy. The first one I want to talk about is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is the first book in the Magicians trilogy. Only the first book really takes place in a college setting, so if you're looking for that in the entire trilogy, just know that it does move on to other events in the later 2 books. In this first one, we follow a young man who is very depressed. He's struggling in his personal life. Where he gets his solace and support is by rereading his favorite childhood books that essentially are these stories set in another world where characters go off to Fillory, and he dreams of magic being real. One day he goes off and gets the opportunity to take a test that turns out to be a test to get into a real magic school. He finds out that magic is real. He goes off to college, and the story ensues. Now, other friends get the opportunity to take the test but don't necessarily get into the school, and so we get to see how differently their lives turn out, whether or not they have the opportunity to get that education. So as I mentioned, only this first book deals with the academic part of it, but it deals so heavily in academia, and specifically the dark, messed up side of academia, that I really want to recommend this one. You get to see the hurdles and barriers that happen when certain individuals are not provided access to education. And so you get to see the things that happen when people take alternative routes to gain knowledge and what happens along the way when people are marginalized and put out that way. And then we get to also see within the college setting, the brutality of it, the difficultness. It leans into a lot of the tropes of just the ridiculously oppressive school environment and the harsh professors, the impossible standards to keep up to, and leans into college life but with a magic spin. I like that this one has a very gritty, almost melancholy tone to it. It's very off-putting to readers. The narrative, I've often said, is not quite right. There's something a little bit imperfect about it, but despite all that, I still really enjoyed my time with this book for what it was doing, especially again in terms of academia. I think that this book creates and has a lot of really good conversations about it. So if you're looking for dark academia with magical spin that is going to deal with the criticism surrounding it, I think that this one is very well done. Next, let's talk about Babel by R.F. Kuang. And this is one of my personal favorite books and a booktube darling, but if you somehow have not heard about it, it is a story that is set in a historical period. It is a piece of fantasy that has different characters going off to Oxford College. They're going there to study translation. And within the story, again, it leans into the tropes of you have a group of students going to school, but this one leans into dark academia, or specifically, I think what the author is doing is making a criticism of dark academia books because it really exposes some of the nuance and underlying issues when it comes to education in general, where there are, of course, prejudice against minorities and how it really is all designed to focus and support those that are more traditionally seen as those that will go into academics, so a white male audience or students are the ones that are best supported. So there's all kinds of really nuanced and interesting conversations around race and class and who gets to be educated and how their education might be different and so forth. So if you're looking for all of those really in-depth conversations, you'll find it here. It leans into, again, the terrible, difficult world of university, the challenges, the demanding profs, the demanding assignments, and so forth. And you have the interplay between the characters as they try to find their way, try to position themselves in a better place, which often means stepping on someone else along the way. And so I really love this book. It had some really great conversations about translation as well. I learned a lot, or had a lot of ideas brought up that I hadn't actually considered when it comes to translating words from other cultures and languages. And so I really enjoyed this book for what it is. It is so smart and heady in all the best ways. It definitely will appeal to a certain kind of reader, but I just happen to be one of those readers, so hopefully you are too. And this video is also an excuse to talk about one of my favorite books I've talked about too many times on the channel, but I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. That is Shadow of the Short Days. And this is a translated book that is set in Iceland, or a secondary version of Iceland. We follow different character perspectives. It is a world where there is a sense of rebellion that is going on because there are those that reign supreme and those that are treated as second-class citizens. So within this world, there is a magic that is interwoven through forms of art. So we follow someone who does graffiti that has magical properties, and they're fighting back against these machines. Part of the story that I rarely get to talk about in my videos, so I'm going to do it here, is the fact that one of the characters is going to school, and we get to see some incredibly dark scenes surrounding their education and the fallout of what happens afterwards. I don't want to give away too much. If you've read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's some very memorable scenes, and again, if you're going to talk dark academia, often that term is used quite lightly. Even within this video, some of the books I'm talking about are leaning a little bit into the darkness. This one goes dark. This has huge trigger warnings, harm to animals, all of the terrible things that could happen within this book. And if you're game for it, it's a really shocking take on dark academia. I loved it, but not for everyone. Hopefully try it out if you're curious for yourself. Next, let's talk about Vicious by V.E. Schwab. And this is a story that follows two men who go to college together. They are first friends. However, eventually they turn into rivals. They are both trying to pursue ways to get magical, or specifically superpowers. And so we follow these individuals as they are going about and trying to do this. Eventually they do succeed. And within the story, they become then super villains to each other, trying to take each other down. That is a basic basic premise of the story. There is more that can be revealed to yourself, but I remember enjoying this one. I do admit it's probably one of the older books in terms of the time that I read it. I read it right when it came out, which was many years ago. I liked it. I've heard other people criticize it and not think it's the bee's knees, but I enjoyed it for what it was doing. It's very much a specific story trying to tell a particular plot. And so again, you have the friends turn to rivals trope, which I personally love, all set around, again, the academic setting, which tends to put people in a place of competition where they always need to step on each other to get the advantage. And so you follow that and then take it into the realm of superheroes and the fantastical, where they are going and doing more than is possible, hence why this is in the SFF part of this video. So I remember liking this one. I never read the sequel that turned it into a duology. I've heard it's not very good, but I do recommend the first one. Again, it's been years, so maybe my memory is mistaken, but I remember enjoying it quite a bit. And last, I want to talk about The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I didn't realize until now, but I actually have 2 books by the same author on this list, but they both apply and they're very different stories, both dealing with dark academia. So in this one, we follow an orphan who gets the opportunity to go to this military magical school. She goes there and learns her trade. Within the later books in the trilogy, you follow her through her military career, but particularly in the first book, The Poppy War, you follow her through her days at school. So you see her as she is competing with classmates, attending classes, and trying again to get her version of certification in this magical world so that she can advance and become somebody. This is one that again leans heavily into the dark side of dark academia. So if you want something that is going to take dark academia to that magical extreme, this is one that I do recommend. The book shifts in the later half to something else and again deals more with the atrocities of war, but is all built around this magical military school preparation and the question of what are they preparing the kids for, and if this is the preparations, what is to come after. So again, I think highly topical, great conversations going on in this book. I know that this book and this series have mixed reactions between reviewers. I recognize that, but I will hold by the fact that I really love this one, even if other people don't. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself, and let me know what is your favorite dark academia book. If I haven't read it, I definitely will check it out. I would love to do a follow-up to this video talking about more dark academia I love, and also be open to doing a video on bad dark academia. So if you're interested in that, let me know, because sometimes it's fun to be negative online. If you want to subscribe and stick around, I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy. If you want to help me out with this video, you can give me a thumbs up. You can drop a comment, even if it's just an emoji. Try to represent a dark academia school setting. And if you want to hit that little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.